Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and I'm here at BMW Seattle today because I want to show you the brand new G80 and G82. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to do a brief walk around, take a look at all of the features, and then another day we'll get a chance to drive it and give you a sense of what it's like to drive it. So let's start with the G82 M4. We'll give it a good walk around, we'll take a look at the seats and all of the technology, and then we'll move on to the G80. All right, so everybody wants to talk about the front new grille, so let's start there, but we're gonna do a full walk around on the exterior because there are a lot of changes just beyond the obvious front kidney grills. But let's start there. I'll show you all the differences and then we'll move to the inside. I doubt that the video is going to do them justice, as every picture and video I've seen so far, even the professionally produced ones, haven't done this front kidney grille and front fascia justice. This looks so much better in person. There's something about the proportions, there's something about seeing the lighting with your eyes that's different from the pictures. Even, for example, if you see the space between the kidney grills actually slopes backwards a little bit as it goes down towards the front, and it makes a difference. So really, really cool. I like it. This is growing on me, and I think this is going to be a very iconic design as we move forward. Now, this being an M4, this is not the M4 Competition, but this does have the adaptive LED with laser assist headlights, and you can tell with the blue internal components right there. Something that I've liked from the get-go is I really like the new hood design. Now, these scallops are not vented like you see with the C's or the CS's, but it definitely gives a really distinct shape, as you can see it coming down into the kidney grills themselves. The other thing that's a really huge different change is these are frameless kidney grills. So these are just like the vent slats and don't have any of the outer border that we've seen for such a long time. And in some ways, I really feel like this is a nod back to the really old BMWs that had the very tall, very elongated kidney grills. So I'll step around and I'm going to show some of the lines down the side separately here in a little bit. But when you look at the non-competition M4, you're looking at 19-inch front wheels and 20-inch rears. You can see the distinctive normal M style to the mirrors with this outer swoop as we look down the side. And I'll look at the interior here in a second. You can see the 20s here on the rear. Now, one thing I'm going to emphasize, because I'm going to show on the M3, you've got different colors of brakes. So you can get red, blue, or black. You have 6-piston, 380mm front rotors and floating calipers in the rear. Comes with the spoiler, as you can see, as we come around. And also, as when you look at the front and rear fascia, this has the black. You can also get that in carbon fiber as well, including the rear spoiler. So quite a bit of difference and changes to the rear too. You can see the design language and how the lights have changed in some of the other reviews we've done and some of the other styles. But the other thing that none of the pictures really did justice, and I'm really looking at right now live, is this huge scallop in the bumper. There is a huge scallop here. The transition between here and here is dramatic. And it really is significantly different. So really take a good look at that, see the differences as we go along. I love these really deeply scalloped wheels. So again, this is the 20-inch rear, deeply scalloped. So you look down the lines of this side as well. All right, so before we go too far, what I want to do is actually emphasize some of the changes you're going to see here in the sidelines, which is subtle, but quite a bit different. So let me go back here to the back and show you. So first of all, everybody talks about the difference in the change in the kink here in the back window. That's definitely there, and it's even a little more emphasized in the M3. But if you can see this line, see the line that comes through the gas door, comes down into the door handle, but then if you notice, it's gone. As you can see, normally that line would extend. It would come all the way down through the door handle and it would extend all the way up into the front quarter panel. Now, you can see a little bit of the curve of the door right here, but that line is actually gone. It disappears. You've got two separate lines. You've got this line that comes in slightly above the door handle, and you can see it dissipate right here and is gone. You've got a second line that starts below it, comes down underneath the door handle, and comes all the way forward, all the way up and ties into the side badging. So really a significant change. The other thing I like quite a bit, if you notice, the side skirts have by default quite a bit of scalloping and are very distinct and very aggressive. So all in all, quite a bit of design language change as you look around the car. And even here, here's the line again that disappeared back in the rear quarter, but it's here now, comes up and fades in again right there, and as fades in, it's gone. So the line fades through the door, which is a very interesting design change. Now, the one other thing I want to call out is most of the time with the F80s and F82s, especially the carbon fiber roof, which this has, would be scalloped. So it would come in and scallop down and back out. This, in this case, you can see has a very distinct ridge. It's got a very distinct ridge on both sides. So quite a bit of change there with the shark antenna back in the back. All right, so let's climb in. I really want to show you some of the differences, but let's go over to the M3 first. All right, so let's take a look at this G80. So this is an M3 Competition, so there's going to be a few subtle differences as we go around. This will have 20-inch front wheels and 21 rears, so there'll be a little bit of the difference as we walk. But as you can see, the front fascia and front hood are very, very similar. This also has the adaptive LED headlights, very similar lines across the front. But the thing I want to emphasize, especially now that we've looked at the G82, is that line down the door, because here it runs the whole way. It's actually quite a bit of a design difference here when you look at them. So if you look here on the front quarter panel, you can see the line is not really there yet, but it's starting to form. It comes down as you come down the quarter panel. Now you have a distinct kink here in the quarter panel. Now the difference with the G82 is the line disappears in the door. But as you go your way down, if you notice, this line now runs above the door handles all the way down and extends all the way into the tail. So in this case, instead of fading in the first part of the quarter panel, it actually runs through the quarter panel and fades as it gets to the rear. So it's an inverse of how that line works. There's also, you notice that lower line that was in the door of the F80, or excuse me, of the G82, isn't there. Side skirts look very, very similar, but in some ways you can see that it isn't just the same car with 4 doors. It's not the same car, just a little bit bigger. There really are some design language differences as you look at it. So as we walk our way around and look at the tail, it's going to be similar. Rear spoiler is kind of a low kick design. And for me personally, I always like the high kick notch design, but this is that low kick design if you don't want something quite as aggressive. You've got the quad black exhaust along with the same black exterior for the lower trim. Again, as we look down the side here, you can see that line through the body, in this case extending through the gas door, extending down the doors above the door handle here, all the way down, with very, very similar mirrors, which isn't surprising. But a little bit of subtle design language around the outside on the G80s instead of the G82s. So the question is really kind of understanding and appreciating the design, not just simply having 2 more doors. All right, so let's take a look at the interior. We're going to use the comparison between the two. The G82 actually has the carbon fiber bucket seats, which is an upgrade, and I think they're really cool. So let's take a look at the two. Let's start in the G80 first. Okay, so obviously comparing a G80 and a G82, so 4-door and a 2-door, but this G80 has the M Sport seats where the G82 has the new carbon fiber bucket seats, and they're radically different. So I want to give you a little bit of comparison, and I'll give you a full interior walkthrough in just a second. But these are these great M Sport seats that we've all come to know and love in the F80s and similar models. You know, they've been updated a little bit, the way the bolstering works. You've got your light-up badging, of course. It's still plastic covered, and this is a brand new car, so it's not even been driven yet. So forgive all the plastic in it. But similar design that we've seen in some of the other models, for example, like the X3M, but updated as we go through. These really are great seats with all of the controls and functionality that we would expect. Now, when we go and look at the carbon fiber bucket seats in a moment, I really want you to notice the difference between them. Briefly looking at the back seats, because this is the M3. Again, the M striping on the seatbelt, laid out really well. Lots of space and even USB power controls in the center of the console and the like. So really great interior. I'll show you the electronics here in a second, but by contrast, let's go look at the carbon fiber bucket seats. So this is an M4. This isn't an M4 Competition, but obviously has been outfitted with the carbon fiber bucket seats. And these really are an entirely different animal when you look at what you can get OEM from the factory and from BMW. These really are almost race seats. there's a lot of enthusiasts and purists that are going to say those aren't race seats because of this function or that function. But these are about as close as I've ever seen BMW offer OEM from the factory. Sure, if you wanted Recaro or Spark or whatever race seats you wanted to put in, you could always do so. But this is something you can order directly from the factory. And again, you've got the M4 badging and lighting in the center. You've got a much more aggressive bolster design. When you get in this seat, it really hangs on to you. It is very, very strong bolstering. Obviously, you can see down the sides, even with holes through them. You can see much more aggressive thigh bolstering. And then this controversial centerpiece here, which sitting in the car, I don't find uncomfortable in the slightest. Now, granted, I haven't driven it for 1,000 miles, but I think it's actually really kind of cool. When we look at it, of course, you've got the carbon fiber back on it. We slide it forward with that very aggressive design. You can always add carbon fiber back into your seats if you like, but this comes with it. Now, the other thing that if you decided to put a roll cage in this, that if you really were going to track your car, and you put the roll cage across the back, you already, and this is why I'm going to call them almost race seats, you actually have the openings that you could put through for a racing harness. So you can get the shoulder straps in that are going to come over the top and are going to give you those options that a normal seat won't do. So if you're a track rat, this may be the option that you want to get factory. Plus, I think they're really comfortable. They work really, really well. Plus, you know, how often can you get race seats with options like power? So huge difference. The biggest thing is getting in them and seeing actually what they feel like, which I'm going to encourage you to do. So that's going to be the night and day difference between the M Sport seats and the carbon fiber bucket seats. Let's do a quick review of the interior. So you can see very similar design language here on the center console that you've seen on some of the newer models, like for example in my review of the X3M. This is very similar, but you're also seeing some of the differences and changes in the setup here. For example, you now have an M mode button, where before you might have individual buttons for each one of the components like steering and power, even braking. Now you've got a dedicated M mode button that's going to take you straight into those settings, which is very different from what it was before. You can also see a little bit of the advancement in going on with the iDrive controls. The buttons are laid out a little bit differently. Contextually, they're a little bit different when you feel them. So all in all, quite a bit of difference as you get through here, especially if you're coming from an F series. In addition, your start button, as a change from the F series, your start button is here instead of up on the center console. So quite a bit of difference as you move through these center controls. Very similar here in the center, USB, you've got a wireless charging pad, and then you get up into your familiar controls for your stereo and all of your environmental controls as well. Now you do have a 10.25 inch display. Now these are display cars, so I apologize. Yeah, that's a low battery warning. There's lots of folks that have been in and out of these so far, but you're looking at a 10.25 inch infotainment system screen here, touch screen, gesture, everything that you would want it to be as you work through it. So we'll do a more detailed review another day, especially when we do the drive. I want to show you some of this functionality, but this is just a great place to start. You can also see with the new center display with all of the different animation and abilities that we have there. And that's all configurable in many, many different ways. Okay, so, and the big orange bar, if you ask, is actually film over the top of the display. So again, forgive me for you know, a low battery warning here. So, but this is really intended to be a quick walkthrough. You can see the new changes to the steering wheel. So this new generation steering wheel, if you're coming out of an F series, you've got your heated steering wheel here, controls in the center. You can see the arms off the steering wheel are a little bit wider, and your M1, M2 buttons are here up high. So coming out of, for example, my F87, your M buttons are here on the stock of the steering wheel itself. And up here, there you've got your lever switches. So it has the new style steering wheel, heated obviously in this case in the M3. And it has this aluminum interior as well. So quick review of what this looks like. The M Sport seat is super comfortable. Let's jump over to the G82 and take a look at that really quick. All right, so with the new carbon fiber bucket seat, let me see if I can do this real time getting into the seat. So you definitely want to slide in more. I'm sitting over that side bolster and then swinging into the seat. Definitely very aggressive. You've got the center, this center divider between your legs. Now, in this being the M4, you've got the carbon fiber accessories here on the steering wheel. We're on the G80. We just looked at it's a little bit different. But what we also want to call out is the differences in the center control. This being a manual, this may be the last generation of manual transmissions for BMW. People are talking about it. We'll see. They've said that for a while. This may be the case. It may not. We'll see as we move forward. But this being a 6-speed manual, but a little bit of differences here by comparison to the G80. As you can see, the iDrive is in a slightly different position. The buttons are laid out a little bit differently, but you have that same kind of texture change coming out of the Fs to the G series on how this works. Though you still have your dedicated M mode button and your setup button. Your start and stop is now down here on the center console rather than up on the up by the steering wheel, and your familiar parking and distance controls, camera, and so on. Drink holder, though I know the Germans for a long time argued you shouldn't have drink holders in cars. And maybe they've finally given up on that. USB power, you've got the ability to have a phone charger here, though this particular car does not. Stereo controls, AC controls. You've got, again, your multimedia display that's gesture and touch and everything that you would want it to be. Okay, and again, low battery in this car because anybody and everybody has been in and out of this car, so I almost feel a little sorry for it because its battery's running a little bit low. But again, this new design to the steering wheel that you've seen in the latest generations, now updated to the G80s, and of course your center display with all of the information that it can show. When I get an opportunity to do a drive, I will actually do a much more detailed information, for example, in the M mode, as you can see, and all the different options that we now have. Though I will say, if I can show it here quickly, as a little hint, one thing that's really cool is you now have controls over the braking itself. So steering, acceleration, suspension, now braking. The other thing I want to show in the competitions is that there are a bunch of new options there as well, which I'll save for another day when we do the drive around. But all in all, really, really sharp. And this has the carbon fiber interior, unlike the G80 we just looked at that has the aluminum style interior. So if you're saying, hey, what about the motor? Yeah, I would be remiss to not talk about this amazing new S58 motor. So on the standard non-competitions, you're looking at 473 horsepower versus 503 for the competition. That's 406 pounds of torque, or 479 pounds of torque on the competition models. And those are tuning. There's some other changes to emphasize those two differences. But all in all, this new S58 motor is really amazing. There's some important things to call out, and you can see some of the immediate differences, especially, and I don't mean to constantly be comparing to the F80s, but that's what a lot of people are going to do because this is that next generation of the M car. So for example, in the F80s, you had that big carbon fiber strut tower bar that looped across the front. Obviously that's gone, but now you're looking at this big triangular metal piece that stretches across, so both point to point on both sides and across the top of the cover. Now the other thing that you're going to have underneath that cover, your turbos, instead of on the S55 motor, which were down low all the way down there, down by where your exhaust and your exhaust headers are, now they're up here on top. So huge difference in the design of the motor as well. You can see intakes on both sides, and this really is going to be an incredible new setup. I cannot wait to drive this car. And you can see the subtle differences also in even the engine compartment itself on how it's laid out. There's quite a bit of difference here across the front. All of the structure here that your strut tower bars are tying into is significantly bigger than it was with the S55 and in the F80 series cars. Now, the other thing that's really cool about this that I'm not going to be able to show because it's way down deep in the motor, I'd have to have about 10 hours of shop time and a whole bunch of tools to show you. BMW's even changed how this motor functions. So way down at the bottom, where your crankshaft comes in and drives all of the heart of your car, you have your crank hub that sits at the front of the S55 motor. Now for the enthusiasts that take their S55 motor well beyond stock, it's possible to potentially have issues with the OEM crank hub. Now the interesting thing about this is BMW's actually changed it. In the S58 motor, which is more horsepower than the S55, they've redesigned the whole crank hub and the front of the crankshaft itself to actually make a difference. So this engine is going to hold more power and higher than the S55. In addition to that, there are changes to the exhaust, suspension, everything to refresh this car to make it new, but I would be remiss not to show you the motor. All right guys, really planned to be just a quick walk around, and I'm going to be releasing my drive video as soon as I can so we get a sense of what they sound like, what they feel like to drive, and all those things that we're all dying to see and feel and experience. So thank you so much to BMW Seattle for giving me this opportunity. I have a ton of new content coming, and I'll see you on my next video.